You might be surprised to learn that it's not as uncommon as you might think to discover an ancestor who had a brush with the law. Whether they were the alleged perpetrator or the victim of a crime, these events would trigger a paper trail just waiting to be investigated by you. Notice that I say alleged because even if one of your ancestors was judged to be innocent of the crime, you could still find arrest records or court records detailing their trial. Theft, fraud, vandalism, assault, murder, illicit affairs, some of these records can take you down genealogy's darker research paths, while others were offenses that are generally considered harmless today. Keep in mind that accessing criminal records can propose challenges due to legal and privacy considerations, as well as the different ways that societies have historically implemented evolving record-keeping practices. But I'm going to show you where to look and what you might find. Criminal records present you with an opportunity to learn so much about your ancestor, their lifestyle, their physical appearance, their relations and acquaintances, and so much more. You might even find a coveted mugshot of an accused ancestor. The word criminal is a broad term traditionally used to describe anyone who's committed a crime, and laws have drastically changed over the years. Under the umbrella of criminals, you'll find pickpockets, murderers, safe blowers, vagrants, trespassers, and a slew of other offenses that range from serious criminal acts to minor incidents that warranted a small fine. Maybe you have an ancestor who was arrested at a speakeasy during Prohibition in Chicago, or got caught milking their neighbor's cow in Texas. There are some pretty odd and weirdly specific laws out there, both current and in the past. When you consider that it's illegal to sing in your swimsuit in Sarasota, Florida, illegal to fly a kite in Victoria, Australia if it annoys someone, or lead a cow drunk in the United Kingdom, illegal to have a snowball fight in Aspen, Colorado, and it was illegal to have a child-run lemonade stand in Iowa until June 2020. Only then do you start to realize that having a quote-unquote criminal in your family might not be as severe as you think. They may have just been trying to sell their delicious lemonade to their neighbors. So how far back could these criminal records potentially go? The creation of laws and enforcing those laws date back to ancient civilizations. As societies developed organized structures to regulate behavior, resolve disputes, and establish order, laws began to emerge and enforcement of those rules began. Laws have been created by a variety of entities over the centuries, including rulers and monarchs, government officials, and religious authorities. So over the centuries, these evolving laws weren't strictly common and civil laws. There were also moral and religious laws and military laws, for example. The earliest known legal codes were developed in ancient civilizations such as Sumeria, Babylon, and Mesopotamia, as early as about 2100 BCE. These codes included rules and penalties for various aspects of life, including criminal behavior. Some of the earliest ancient Egyptian legal texts that addressed various criminal activities date back to around 2000 BC, which contained laws against theft, fraud, and violence. Ancient Greece and Rome would also develop laws to govern their societies. By the time we get to medieval Europe, we see the emergence of common law and civil law. And of course, during this time, it wasn't at all uncommon for there to be a crossover between civil law and religious law. Concepts of justice and enforcement were often entwined with religious and cultural beliefs prevalent in society. Figuring out how far back you can go with criminal records and what's available will of course depend on the time period and the location that you're researching, as well as the type of record that you're seeking. The earliest recordings of criminal offenses may be the clay Ebla tablets, which were discovered in the ancient city of Ebla in modern-day Syria and contain legal documents and include court proceedings. In medieval Europe, court rolls began to be kept to document court proceedings. These rolls recorded cases, judgments, fines, and other legal matters, providing insights into local disputes. The English legal system maintained extensive records of court proceedings in the King's Bench and Common Pleas courts. These records, known as plea rolls, contain details of cases, legal arguments, and judgments. Researching the laws of a particular place and time can provide social and historical context for a better understanding of the society your ancestor lived in and what their life experience was like. The more complex and populated these societies became, the more detailed and complex the laws were to reflect and adapt to this natural flow of change and growth. So whether you're simply looking for some social context or you're hoping to dig deeper into a criminal incident involving your ancestor, what types of criminal records are there? Well, criminal activity produces quite the paper trail, especially if they were convicted or repeat offenders. So there's a lot that you can find, starting with arrest and booking records. These records document the initial stages of an individual's interaction with law enforcement or the beginning of an investigation. They may include details about the arrest, charges, date of arrest, and personal information about the individual. Wanted posters and fugitive records. Wanted posters and fugitive records were created to assist in the capture of individuals who were evading law enforcement. These records may contain physical descriptions, aliases, and other identifying information. Law enforcement records. Police departments and law enforcement agencies may have records related to criminal investigations, arrests, and interactions with individuals. These records can vary widely based on the agency's practices and policies. You'll find that there's a good amount of police gazettes being digitized and made available online, detailing law enforcement dealings. Court records and case files. Court records include documents related to criminal cases such as indictments, court dockets, trial transcripts, and verdicts. These records can provide details about the charges, legal proceedings, and outcomes of the cases. I'll be doing a more in-depth video about court records on their own, but for now, just know that courts can be a fantastic source of loads of genealogy records. Prison and incarceration records. Records related to imprisonment provide information about an ancestor's time served in prison or other correctional facilities. These records may include dates of incarceration, release, and sometimes details about the conditions of confinement. Newspaper articles. Newspapers often reported on criminal activities, trials, and verdicts, and can provide context, details, and coverage of significant criminal events involving your ancestors. Probation and parole records. If an ancestor was placed on probation or parole after serving a sentence, these records could offer insights into their post-conviction life and activities. Execution records. It goes without saying, but some of these records will be tough to read. Sadly, that can be the case if we scour records in pursuit of family history, but within this record set, you can usually find the date of death, age, occupation, and the crime that was committed by the executed. If you do find these types of records or a coroner's report within the criminal record for your ancestor, don't let that trail go cold. My video detailing more death records can give you ideas on what to hunt for next to keep your research going. Next, there are pardons and clemency records. These records document instances where an individual's criminal record is officially forgiven or reduced by a governing authority. These records may provide reasons for the pardon and relevant dates. And finally, we have military records. Criminal military records might detail actions taken against military personnel who were charged with criminal offenses while serving in the military, perhaps AWOL records, or possibly served time as a prisoner of war, for example. My papa used to talk about one of his superiors in the Navy who had an axe to grind with him and would throw him in confinement any chance he got, but I have yet to find those records. How would you know whether you needed to search criminal records for an ancestor? Some ancestors may have done their best to sweep these details under the rug. Not all family members are keen to share stories about a black sheep in the family, maybe out of shame or possibly out of fear that they might give the family a bad name, but sometimes you might pick up comments here or there. or even learn about family lore that's connecting you to a notorious criminal. If there aren't family stories, searching newspapers for articles about your ancestors just might bring up some unexpected discoveries as well. You might also find an ancestor on the census and discover that their current residence was the county jail, which is a great point of information to jump off of, since you'll then have the date and location where they were an inmate. You'll see various terms used to describe criminals as you search these records, including prisoner for someone serving time in a prison, convict for someone who's been convicted of a crime, and inmate for someone being held in jail, for example. Though jails have changed over the years, they're generally intended to hold people for a short time while awaiting trial, usually for minor crimes. Since they're often local facilities, they're usually run by the city or county. Then we have state and federal prisons. The federal prison system started in 1891 with the Three Prisons Act, creating federal prisons in Kansas and Washington. Federal prisons are for those who committed federal crimes, like tax fraud, for example, while state prisons are for those who committed state crimes, including murder or robbery. All of these terms are important to keep in mind because not only will it help you understand the circumstances that your ancestor found themselves in, but it will also aid you in your search for their records. Starting your search online is a great place to begin because there are so many resources there, including guidance to finding records offline once you've determined the date and location of the offense or where your ancestor was being held. You can begin on free sites like FamilySearch.org, or Cindy's List. And sometimes a quick Google search might even help you determine if a particular county has digitized any of their criminal records. Of course, Ancestry probably has the largest database of criminal records online, so if you don't have a membership, be sure to check out your local library so you can use the Ancestry Library Edition for free. When you're on these genealogy sites and you're searching the card catalog like we are here, this is where you'll be using those keywords I mentioned because you'll see different results as you change them out. So we go from searching criminal with 982 results to prison with 65, and then convict with 43. You can even use police, and that comes up with 63 results. So that's something that you'll want to play around with based on what you're looking for specifically. Search as many newspaper databases as you can. There's newspapers.com, Genealogy Bank, Chronicling America, Newspaper Archive, and don't forget to search the local library or historical society for old newspaper articles that aren't available in an online database and have since gone out of service. If you're still feeling lost, don't worry, there will be a video coming up with tips and tricks on how and where to search newspapers. Once you know the location an offense took place, you can check the county courthouse, state archives, or historical society to determine if they have any records documenting proceedings, historical law enforcement records, or information on the jail or the prison that you're searching for. Thanks to efforts made by these organizations to preserve the records and make them more widely accessible, many have begun digitizing these records and putting them online. But if that's not the case and you're unable to visit in person, you can always call or email for more information or to check and see if they can do lookups on your behalf. Consulting these various resources is essential to getting a comprehensive picture of your ancestors' interactions with the criminal justice system. Now that you've seen what some of these records look like, you can see how helpful this information could be for your research. You typically learn the full name, age, and location of the individual, perhaps even an address, helping you confirm their identity, calculate their birth year, track their whereabouts, and establish connections to your family tree. Depending on the record, you might find a photograph too. If your ancestor used aliases or had multiple names, these might be listed in the records as well. It's likely that a physical description was also included detailing their height, weight, hair color, eye color, and any distinctive features like scars or tattoos if they had any. The record will likely indicate the nature and date of the offense, perhaps any known associates, family members, witnesses to the crime who may also be family, friends, neighbors, and their testimonies. You might be surprised to learn that there are records for the wives and children of convicts or children born in prisons. Other information that you might learn is their occupation, any previous criminal activities, or a date of death if the incident resulted in their demise. Court records offer insights into the legal process that your ancestor underwent, including the court where the case was heard, the trial date, the legal arguments presented, and the outcome of the case. You can learn whether your ancestor pleaded guilty or not guilty, and whether they were found guilty or acquitted. If your ancestor was convicted, the record will document the sentence imposed by the court, which might include fines, imprisonment, or other penalties. If your ancestor appealed the verdict or sought clemency, the records may include information about these legal actions. If your ancestor served time in prison, prison records can provide insights into their incarceration, behavior in prison, and their release date. If your ancestor was a repeat offender, multiple criminal records can provide you a broader view of your ancestor's interactions with the legal system and potential patterns of behavior. Or maybe there was a notorious horse thief that was harassing the community your great-grandparents lived in which case you could learn more about one of their experiences as horse owners and something that would have likely been discussed at home, maybe sitting around the dinner table, recounting the latest reports of the horse bandit. Understanding the nature of the offense can provide insights into the social and economic conditions that your ancestor may have faced. Criminal records can also reflect the legal and social norms of the time, helping you understand the era in which they lived. Researching your own family history can be an emotional roller coaster. Inherently based on the nature of these types of records dealing with criminal activity, you very well may come across some disturbing information. When you're researching your own family history, this can especially hit home. As professional genealogists, we're taught to stay neutral while researching, not to jump to any conclusions or pass judgments. And I think it's important to say before ending this that when you're researching criminal records, keep in mind that while criminal records offer valuable information and they can help you break down brick walls, connect the dots, it's also important to approach this research with sensitivity and an understanding that individuals may have had complex reasons for their actions. Though you may not understand the why, these records will shine light on the circumstances and experiences of your ancestors. So good luck on tracking them down and happy researching.